Factors 6 and 7, samadhi and equanimity. Equanimity is in Pali upekkha. Samadhi is often translated as concentration. It would be better to translate it as centering, focusing, balancing. The essence of samadhi, when we start with a word like concentration, people refer to the strain of paying attention, and often tension creeps in, so people do give themselves headaches with attempting to pay attention. And how do you pay attention? It's interesting, in elementary school, your teacher may have exclaimed to the class, "Pay attention," but they never tell you how. They just say, "Pay attention," and you're 7 years old. You're supposed to know how to do that. How do you manipulate your mind to pay attention? How do you... And of course, some kids will wrinkle their brow like this because it looks like you're paying attention. It doesn't help. So it's not an act of squinting, and it's not squinting your brain either, or your mind, but it is, well, they should introduce it into classrooms early in life. They should just get everybody to look through a telescope or binoculars and say, "Now focus the binoculars." That's how you do it. That's what paying attention is. When you're focused, when it's luminously clear and everything is in focus and you can see. The essence of focus is luminosity, luminous in the sense of lucid, clear, lit. So when we talk about light of the mind as well, so there's a lot of talk, the word enlightenment. These are enlightenment factors. Does it really mean light, or is it a poetic use of the word light? Can a blind person be enlightened? Yes. Is it inner light? I suppose there's some sense of that. There's inner darkness. More people will be familiar with inner darkness than they will be with inner light. When we speak of enlightened people, we're talking about a very small portion of the population as enlightened. When we speak about unenlightened, we're speaking about the mass of humanity, and when we speak about darkness, ignorance, we're speaking about a substantial portion of the population as well. And lots of people are familiar with depression and anger and despair and anxiety. And if you're a little bit of the poetic nature, you will know that they use words like darkness and so forth for that. Being lost in the fog. These, of course, are represented in art and in poetry. So when we talk about the mind, we have to describe it in terms of external things that you can see. But I would say not to overemphasize the idea of light too much. The light is realization, is clarity, is ability to see the details of things, to see the truth about things. And there is a moment of perhaps like inner light that does arise. I mean, neurologists and various people who are interested in the brain activity, they ask people, what are you experiencing when this happens and that happens? And inner light may be experienced, but the literalness of it is not so important. It's more important than light. So light is just not that important, is it? Understanding is. Well-being is. The heart unburdened is. Light is not. It's a side effect. So samadhi is this faculties of the mind that are in balance, and they're positive factors. So I spoke earlier in previous talks about the abandonment of the 5 hindrances. the abandonment of greed and anger, sloth, agitation, doubt. By the way, if you're interested in practice, you really have to know the 5 hindrances. They are essential in understanding this process towards awakening. They are the nemesis of the 7 factors of enlightenment. So you see this in the foundations of mindfulness. The 4th of the 4 foundations of mindfulness, Dhamma objects or Dhamma categories. The first is these 5 hindrances. And then later on you encounter the 7 factors of awakening. And you'll probably find formulations of right mindfulness that have only those 2 categories in them. Just the 5 hindrances, 7 factors of awakening. If you can really get to know these inside out, then you have a comprehensive way of approaching the entire path. And you will see that lots of people are not able to understand their own experience of the 5 hindrances. The 3rd category is mindfulness of the mind, and there you have an attempt to train the mind to actually see these hindrances. So you're just ask some simple questions, kind of a checklist of simple questions. Are you angry or not? You're asking yourself this. Angry or not? Greedy or not? Confused or not? Expansive or not? Unsurpassable or not? Are you in a state of consciousness that you can't go beyond, that is so good that you haven't gone beyond that? These are questions that you interrogate yourself with, and that is to know. You see this duality, the Buddha just splits this up into 2 categories. Hindrance or their opposites, the 7 factors. So this is very critical. The mind is such a vast sort of cloudy sky. I don't know whether you learned about clouds when you were in elementary school or in high school. When a person has no idea of the nature of or the distinction of different types of clouds, you just look up in the sky and there's just this mass of stuff up there. But it is amazingly clarifying to find out that there are cumulus clouds and stratoclouds and all of these different types of clouds. And then once you find out what they are, then the sky takes on a different experience. You start to be able to name and understand what's going on in the atmosphere. The mind is like that for most people. They don't get systematic education. The education system spends a lot of time teaching you about clouds and nothing about teaching you about your emotional states. They teach you about reading and writing and arithmetic and clouds, identifying all of the nature of rocks and elements, chemistry, all kinds of things, political structures, virtually nothing about your emotional state, that which is most important to your life. Formerly, that was left to religion, but not all religions are very adept at that either. So this is the critical element to well-being in life. And actually, of course, if many individuals in the society have no idea about the functions of the mind, are uneducated about that, then it's going to affect the entire structure of society as well. And the opposite, if you have a large portion of the society that's trained in these things, you're going to have a very beneficial effect on social systems, family systems, friendships, etc. So this is why whatever stage of life you're in, it's never too late to learn about the nature of the inner life and the highest possibilities of them, because you won't find the higher possibilities in samadhi. this sixth factor, is the higher possibility of the mind. You will just hear in normal psychology about functional psychology, but you won't hear about supernormal, above normal well-being and happiness. So this is what samadhi is. And I just want to go through the four stages. So this is the brilliance of the Buddha as well, is to be able to articulate the supernormal conditions of the mind. When the mind has been purged of the stains of psychic irritants, purged of the five hindrances, is it just one type of consciousness, or are there levels of consciousness? And he briefly describes it as 4 levels of consciousness. 4 levels of consciousness. The first jhana, which we touched on before, has the emotional quality of joy. It still involves some type of thought processes, vitaka and vichara, applied and sustained. Attention, which may take the form, verbal forms, but it is exclusively on a selected topic and it doesn't deviate from that, and the 5 hindrances are absent. So you have the 5 elements of the first jhana, applied and sustained attention or thought, joy of the mind, ease of body, and complete engagement or oneness with the subject, ekaggata, the last factor. This is a critically important factor, and it's quite often defined as or misunderstood as a kind of a laser-like one-pointed attention. And again, that's a misdirection. It's unification of the mind. The word one is in there, eka in Pali, eka, one. But oneness is far different than one-pointedness, like the tip of a spear. You could think about it that way, the complete attention to a single point of interest, but that should not be interpreted as too much of a physical simile. It's not like that in the mind. The mind isn't a sharpened spear, and you're likely to give yourself a headache if you understand it that way, instead of a complete rapt interest, enraptured. And sometimes this word piti, the third factor of the first jhana, which I'm translating as joy, is translated as rapture, rapturous experience. And if you look at, especially the commentaries go into it, the Visuddhimagga, the late commentaries go into the types of experience of joy. And they are all the way from a kind of mild ripple of skin that maybe your hair stands up, to tears of joy, shivers going up your spine, and kind of a levitation kind of feeling like you can hardly stay on the ground. You're jumping for joy. By the way, so all of these types of joy are experienced in ordinary life by people. When your child wins the race, you feel the smile. When your country wins the medal in the Olympics and they get up on the platform and then the national anthem plays, even if you're not nationalistic, you can get tears in the corner of your eye. When things go well for you, you win the lottery or something like this, you can feel shivers up your spine. You can literally, of course, you see people jumping up and down. They can hardly stay on the ground. This starts to occur actually early in childhood. You see children reacting this way. You get a puppy for Christmas and you'll see tears, etc., of joy. So this type of emotional rapture can occur in samadhi. And the reason why it's truly important is that you have discovered how to unburden yourself. The normal, whether we understand it or not, but we're under stress all the time. We have a low-grade or maybe high-grade anxiety going on. There's just existential anxiety. There's a lot of things to attend to. There's overwhelming sense that everything is uncertain and out of control, including the meaning of your existence. So this is playing upon people. This is well articulated, especially in non-religious cultures, especially starting in the 19th century in the West. You see this emphasis by people who are very lucid about this, very clear about this, very bright about the nature of the atmosphere of the Western society as Christianity was falling away, is that existential anxiety happens. The very experience of being alive is a anxious experience. Samadhi, all of that's gone. All of the hindrances are gone, and you're not in existential doubt anymore. It's not something that should be in any way that one could criticize. And some people have, like people who are very involved in political type of restructuring of society quite often criticize people who meditate because they're somehow avoiding the responsibility for changing society, etc. But quite often the motivations behind people who are trying to change society is just a form of anxiety. They're hoping to somehow make things, all the problems go away by rearranging the social structure. But it doesn't. You can live in a society where everybody has plenty, there's good medical care, there's all kinds of equality and so forth, and everybody's still racked with anxiety. It doesn't address the deeper issues. Samadhi does. It's not the final, it's not the end of things, but it gives you a taste of what it might be like to actually be free from oppressive states of just that which goes along with existence without samadhi. So this is a taste, what we would say a taste of nibbana, a temporary experience of freedom. So it goes on, and one of the similes, the way to understand these is through similes. So the first jhana has a simile of a bathman, and a bathman is somebody who attends in the time of the Buddha to basically works at a spa, and they make the soap for people to use. And this soap seems to be very high-grade stuff. It's made with clay and various perfumes and soap type of things, and you have to manipulate it a lot. So it's it's like making bread. Yeah, a lot of kneading goes on. Kneading in the sense of K-N-E-A-D. Knead, not N-E-E-D. Knead, to knead dough. So this is an act of distributing the moisture through this clay ball, which is the soap, so that it's perfect for using to scrub the body. And this is an art to this, and it has to be spread evenly throughout this ball of soap, ball of clay soap. Notice the activity sense that you're actively attempting to spread what? Well, you're attempting to spread the essential emotional quality of piti, of joy, throughout your emotional structure, and it is also going to affect your entire body. So the sukha, this happiness quality, this pleasant quality, pervades your entire body. And so you can see activity there. You're aware of what's going on in your mind. You're aware of what's going on in your body. And you're actually making suggestions to yourself. That's the only way you can make this distribute throughout your body and your mind, your emotional structure and your body. Naturally speaking, whenever you really are interested and attending to something, that kind of experience will rise. So when somebody gets a gift that they really like and wanted, you'll see that their entire attention is on that gift. Or they get into a relationship there. It's the first date, and they finally found the perfect person, and they're going to be absolutely, fully, rapturously attentive to that person. They can't believe their good fortune. And without trying, they're going to experience joy, and the body is going to drop into the background. So this naturally occurs, but the Buddha is urging to become a specialist in this and get skills at this, to be able to access this joy, rapture, and the secondary element right through the entire your physical body. Sometimes people spend too much time separating the body and the mind. You really can't separate your body and your mind. The feeling of joy gives the impression that your entire body is experiencing this elation, this happiness. So this is the instructions. As you move deeper into this samadhi, and by the way, these are the 7 factors of enlightenment, so we're actually seeking to go as deeply as possible into this samadhi, which are called jhanas. The second jhana, the applied and sustained thought, falls away, and you're still left with joy pervading the body and mind. And this oneness, this unification with the object, but you don't have to think about it. You've passed that stage where you have to orient yourself to that. You're now in. And that is compared to a mountain lake which has no rivers running into it, no streams running into it. And there's it's clear and pure, fresh water in the mountains with no apparent external source to it. But there's a spring that rises up and feeds this mountain pool. So this is the simile for the second jhana. And it's a mysterious source of joy. Now, most people want joy, and people experience joy. They find joy. So they go out to their favorite restaurant and they enjoy themselves. They watch the football game. They enjoy themselves. But the source of that is clearly external. You're getting it through your sensory experience. In the first jhana, you're getting it through examination, through thought processes. By the second jhana, though, these sources have mysteriously dropped away, and yet you're being fed with this. And of course, the image is pure, clean, abundant water, which is removed. It's mysterious. You look around, why is that person in rapture? So some person is sitting, say a monk is sitting under a tree in India, perhaps in the shade, and there's a kind of expression of rapture on their face, very deep joy, the relaxed face of the meditator, and the body is sitting upright, and the person is observing from a distance. They wonder, what's so interesting? Why is that person experiencing that rapture? And that is the source is coming up from within. And what is the source? It is the absolute abandonment of all of the negative, the hindrances. There is no psychic anxiety. There's no hostility. It's just like you've entered a world in which all the problems have been solved. There are no problems left. You're not worried about what you're going to eat, or whether your job's going to last, or whether you're going to get over your sore throat, or how your relationships are going, or all of these things. You're free from those. And when that happens, by the way, people have trouble conceiving of that. Sometimes they think it would be boring if they didn't have all these troubles. what would my life be without all these troubles? But actually, it is the nature of the mind. So the Buddha talks about this. If you manage to do this, if you manage to free yourself completely from these hindrances, and you enter fully into these focused states, the mind is by its very nature luminous, light, free, rapturous. That's its nature. You don't have to worry, but what about me? Maybe my nature isn't. You don't have a individual nature. When you go into there, your individuality falls away. And this thing called the mind, turns out it's not your mind. It turns out that you didn't make your mind. You don't know how it works. It just is, and it's not yours. And this is the same, of course, with your body. You didn't make your body. You don't know how the thing works, why it grew that way. And your mind is the same. In fact, this person who has the body or has the mind is the fiction. The body is there, the mind is there. The one who owns the mind, who made the mind, is not there. So the mind has universal processes, just like gravity has universal processes. Physics, we know these universal characteristics apply. They're not personal or anything like that. They just work that way. So this is the nature of the mind. So you can be unburdened with the worry that maybe mind doesn't work that way. If you can get to that condition, then you will have a universal experience of these samadhi factors. As we go deeper, then the pleasure in the body remains. Mindfulness is extremely intense. Of course, mindfulness being the first of the 7 factors of enlightenment, it accompanies you through these samadhi states. A mindfulness has to be highly present and strong in order to enter this. And to maintain it and stay in it, the mindfulness has to be present and very strong. So then we have a simile of lotus plants that are growing up from the bottom of a pond, and they are suspended. They haven't broken the surface yet, but they're saturated with water, so that the buoyancy, they have neutral buoyancy, so they float. There's no effort for them to be dangling upright in the water, and they're saturated with this cool water, pervades every aspect of them. Now it's effortless. This third jhana is like that. You are suspended. You have no gravitational weight, and your psyche, your emotional structure is pervaded with this cool, refreshing emotion. So to get into those things, use the similes. The similes are the pictures to guide you in. Words don't work as well as pictures. So the Buddha draws pictures with words. And so you can imagine that. Look down into water sometime and see the underwater plants floating. You may not have access to lotuses, but maybe seaweed or any kind of floating underwater plants are beautiful, suspended, no gravitational aspect to them. The weight of existence is gone. And these days, we see it with astronauts floating around in their capsules. We see them with zero gravity, zero weight. The body is great. However, despite the fact that they have zero gravity, doesn't mean that they're happy. So this is another kind of zero gravity, which is the real zero gravity. You can't get out of the human dilemma of anxiety and problems just by having no weight, because everybody who went swimming then would have no problems. But people who swim have problems. But it's a little way of indicating the emotional state. But the body itself, the experience of the body itself is gravityless. It is suspended. So that's the inner experience of these deep states. By the way, I'm talking about very deep states. This isn't something you're going to, after this talk, just sit down in your living room and do this. A lot of people are quite mistaken about that. They have no sense of the how supernormal this is. And sometimes they go to retreats and they think they've had these experiences, but they're just sadly mistaken. And the worst mistake you can make is to assume that you've had a very deep experience when you haven't, because that deprives you of the motivation to go farther. So always underestimate what you experience. Underestimate it rather than overestimate is much more important that you underestimate your attainments and your capacities than to overestimate. You always should ask for more. It could be better, deeper, more wonderful. Always think that way in this. And there will be many people who indeed meditate for their lives but do not get to this stage. These deeper jhanas, the third jhana and so forth, are not available to many, many people. It does require a special lifestyle. It requires a commitment to practice all of these things. Something like being a top-notch pianist or something like this. It's not a dime a dozen. It doesn't happen that way. The whole childhoods are devoted to the development of these things. Special education, things like this. This is virtuosity in the emotional and existential dimension of human existence. It doesn't mean that you should just give it up, because every step of the way along it improves the quality of your life. And it is worth thinking about, and is worth spending time moving towards, because even if you come into what we called passaddhi, the fifth factor that precedes samadhi, that is enough more or less to retire with a small pension. It is you're not so terribly dependent on the external world anymore. You are approaching a sort of emotional independence from the outer world. And even the slightest bit of that just changes your relationship to an ordinary existence and all of the motivations that people have. And you start to feel this peace and calm come to your heart, right? So this is extraordinarily valuable, and so don't worry if you don't manage to win the Tchaikovsky competition, if you aren't the best violinist in the world, never mind. The fourth jhana is very, very deep, and it is, the simile is a person is now just covered with a white cloth, and this white cloth symbolizes the idea that the body is virtually non-existent at that point. There's no experience of having a body, and mind has come to such a state of stillness that it's not joy. There's no joy in it. There's this quality of equanimity. So the fourth jhana has as its emotional quality equanimity, and equanimity in this case is absolute stillness. But don't think about it as dull or anything like this. This is a form of happiness, but very difficult to express in language. It's the most refined kind of happiness, this equanimity. And that brings me to the seventh factor of enlightenment, which is equanimity. So notice here that there's this beautiful transition from the fourth jhana, which is characterized emotionally as equanimity, perfect balance, stillness, balance. and equanimity as an enlightenment factor. So this quality of unshakable stability in the midst of change is a result of wisdom and strength of mind. The Buddha gives a little simile. He says, as the great earth does not react whatever is thrown upon it, so one with equanimity and wisdom, and of course you can't be equanimous without wisdom, does not react, whether praised or blamed, good fortune, bad fortune, obscurity or fame, whatever occurs. So as the great earth, sometimes garbage is thrown upon it, sometimes rose petals are thrown upon it. It's non-reactive. It's indifferent to it. So this is now a stage of incredible security. So that's one of the terms that the Buddha uses for achieving this states of enlightenment, is that you are incredibly secure. You are unshakably secure. You are not at the world's disposal anymore. You have arrived, and your well-being is not losable. It's built into the system. It's unshakable. So this is this quality of equanimity. And there's two types primarily. One is, of course, this absolute stillness of deep samadhi. And that is, sometimes you see some of the Chinese schools of Buddhism, the monks doing some strange kind of acrobatic stuff, balancing stuff, where they're balancing on one thumb. You thought it was hard enough to balance on one hand, try it on one thumb. Just kind of demonstration of it's an outward demonstration of inward stillness, this perfect focus and balance. And then you'll also see these schools of the Shaolin schools and so forth, this incredible acrobatic movements, but with complete control. These martial arts, by the way, have really come out of these, of the inner life. The monks had some problems with aggressive people, and all humans have problems with relationships. And you have problems with your own five hindrances. The five hindrances you need to cultivate your martial arts within your own mind. You're being attacked and seduced and induced to sloth and induced to agitation and persuaded to be in doubt by your functions of your own mind. Do you know the moves? Do you know the counter moves? By the way, you have to practice them again and again because they're very fast. These hindrances are very fast. You got to be faster. You got to catch them before they rise. This is in martial arts are external demonstrations of what is going on internally. You are dealing sometimes with multiple aggressors. And you see, they cultivated a whole external type of skill based on internal ideas, how you deal with the internal world of the mind. And if you're very, very good and adept at this, then you can defeat the five hindrances. And you live in security. So these activities are similes for your inner life. Yeah? So you see the monks fending off 3 or 4 people and so forth, using techniques and spinning in the air and so forth. It's just an outward manifestation of the inner life. This is what your real martial arts are, what you have to do with inside you all the time. And you need to learn them. By the way, you know what the first The first skill you learn when you go to a judo class or something like this is how to fall. It's like you're not gonna win. You learn how to fall without hurting yourself. You learn how to not hurt yourself, because you're going to lose a lot of bouts with the hindrances. They're going to win. You got to learn how not to get swept away by that. You need to learn how to get back up. You need how to prevent it next time. You need to head it off at the pass, and you need to practice it a lot. So these are practice sessions. Meditation are practice sessions. And the mind has these elements in it that are problematic, and they kill some people. The hindrances will kill you. They'll beat you up badly sometimes too. Oh yes, they do bad things to you. So you need to know how to deal with them. And then if you can, and you can get into a condition of mastery, then you have defeated those hindrances and you're free. So we come to the end of the 7 factors of awakening. I wish you well in your journey.